Hey all, welcome to another Redzone Rodeo episode. We are happy to have you all back. I am your co-host Carson, and I'm here with my other co-host Rob. And we've got some football to talk about today. Week 2 has finished up in the UFL. Some crazy close games. I think all of the games, honestly, were within one score, which was super crazy. Had some awesome comebacks that happened. But unfortunately, it was a very depressing week for myself and Rob. First of all, the Iowa women's basketball team lost in the final. Heartbreaking to me. And on top of that, back-to-back pretty much, then my Roughnecks lost to the DC Defenders. It was really a sad week, or weekend, I should say, for me. With both of these teams losing. But to get into the Houston Roughnecks loss, I actually thought that the Roughnecks ended up playing a lot better than what they did last week in week 1. I feel like they cleaned up some of the issues that they had week 1, and they started to play on the factors that made them a little dominant in the game against DC. There was unfortunately some tragedies that happened. We had our starting quarterback, Jarrett Guarantano. He went down with a back injury, and it was recently reported that he's actually going to be missing at least a month, if not more. There was, I think, a bruised rib or something like that. So he is going to be down for the count, but it paved a way for Iowa legend that grew up in Johnston, Iowa, pretty much right in the same neck of the woods that I did. Reed Sennett came on the field and absolutely lit it up for the Roughnecks. They had a terrible start. Defense was holding strong and still looks dominant, which is what I'm obviously happy about when it comes to the Roughnecks playing. At least that has remained constant week 1, week 2. Reuben Foster messing people up, which is always great to see. But when Reed Sennett arrived on the field following Jarrett's injury, he really kind of changed things up. The wide receivers got into play. There seemed to be a lot more synergy on the offense, some crazy scores, things that we just hadn't seen for the Roughnecks in week 1. So really, really great to see. Unfortunately, they just couldn't get the job done in DC. They fell in the later portions of the fourth quarter. They finally got the ball back. Crazy ending to the game. But without timeouts left, our offensive line made terrible false start penalties, which caused clock drain and then clock runoff. And at the end of the game, Reed Sennett just threw up a ball. And it honestly, it was kind of crazy because the defenders, there was no one guarding the end zone. There was just one player. And Braden Bowman, our tight end, ended up navigating through, and the ball was just kind of overthrown over his shoulder. If he had just turned the right way, he probably would have caught it and they would have scored a touchdown and won that game, which is kind of so crazy for me to think about that. But yeah, the momentum really shifted when our running back Kirk Merritt went down. There was that big play across the middle, got so many yards, got the ball stripped. Then he fell on his wrist and, not great stuff. Still waiting to hear if he's going to be okay. But after that moment, the defenders really kind of took over the game momentum wise. And really disappointing that they lost because I felt like the Roughnecks really came out, especially in the second and third quarter, and really showed that they can compete with some of these, better teams like the Defenders were. So yeah, other than that, though, good game, but they failed to play all 60 minutes. So hopefully next week they'll be able to play all 60 minutes, hopefully with Reed Sennett being that day one guy going in. To this next week will help the chances of the Roughnecks winning their first game of the season. But shout out to Chris Odom. He's back in there. He recorded his first sack of the season with his season premiere. Going to be great to have him. And I'm hoping Mark Thompson returns for week 3. So things to look forward to, Roughneck Nation. So stay with us.
Yeah. One thing I've got to say I really admired about the Roughnecks performance was their red zone defense because Tomo was moving the ball up and down the field in that first half. But once he got down in the red zone, he just couldn't do anything with it. And I think that's probably the most important, time for a defense to stand up. And the Roughnecks did it consistently against a high-level spring league football quarterback in Jordan Tomo. So if the Roughnecks fans out there are looking for something to hang their hat on and be excited about, that's also something I think they did very, very well in that game. Uh, Speaking of heartbreaking, heartrending disappointment, oh man, my Renegades put up one great fight against the Battlehawks, but when it mattered most, when things were most important, they kind of just fell apart. Uh, I think the game was 24-24, and the Battlehawks were driving down the field looking to go score the game-winning field goal. The Renegades defense had forced a third and long. AJ McCarron dropped back to pass, threw a ball, hit the ground. It looked like it was going to be a fourth and long, and they were going to punt. The Renegades were to get the ball back with potentially a chance to win the game. But the Renegades decided to get a defensive pass interference call, and it was very clearly a correct call. It was bad play on the Renegades secondary that led to a defensive pass interference, which extended the Battlehawks drive, which eventually afforded them the opportunity to kick a game-winning field goal as time expired and beat out the Renegades on that last-second field goal. So there was definitely some sloppiness from the Renegade side in this game that cost them really big. Not just that penalty, but there were several other defensive penalties throughout the game that kind of extended Battlehawks drives that led to Battlehawks scores that shouldn't have happened otherwise. The offensive line also had another abysmal game. Gave up some big time sacks, wasn't really able to get the run game going. The defense, again, was weak in the middle of the field, but this time I think the secondary struggled even more than they did against Birmingham. Gave up some really big plays to those wide receivers they have over there in St. Louis, which those are probably the best wide receivers in all of spring football or among the best wide receivers, so that's understandable. But one thing I have to say I'm super impressed with is the play of both quarterbacks, Lindsey Scott and Luis Perez. I thought they both were amazing whenever they were on the field. I was super impressed with all our wide receivers and all our tight ends. I think we have, a top-notch passing offense. We went toe-to-toe with AJ McCarron and all those guys without Ja'Cory Pearson, granted, but still we went toe-to-toe with them, score for score, when I think our defense played significantly worse than theirs did. So I think as long as we have this passing game in rhythm the way it is right now, we're certainly able to go into any stadium and face any team and have a real chance at winning. Um, I think the run game with Lindsey Scott is really exciting. I love those little option plays they worked in for him. He scored a touchdown on one this past weekend. That was super exciting to see. I can't wait to see them work him into the offense in more creative ways. They had a wide receiver reverse, I think, to that really fast wide receiver we have, Peyton. That was some nice creativity on the side of the offensive coordinator, because one of the criticisms I had last week was that the offensive coordinator's play calling was really bad and really stale, and I thought that switched around this week. I thought the play calling was much more innovative and less predictable, and I was very happy with the change they made with the offensive play calling. So there were definitely some good things. We almost beat the Battlehawks, who, in my opinion, are one of the best teams in the league right now. We were so close. And honestly, if the defense hadn't choked with that terrible penalty, we probably would have beat the Battlehawks. So there's also reasons for optimism with the Renegades. Looks like the team is starting to come together in some areas while others are still struggling. But I feel pretty good still about the season. I think we could still certainly make the playoffs. And once we get there, who knows what's going to happen. They went there, as like a 4-win team last year and managed to win it all. So got to get in the dance, and then anything can happen once you get there, which the Renegades
Absolutely.
are a living testament to. So
Yeah. No, I thought that Arlington's play was really, really good for what they were able to do to stand up to the Battlehawks. It honestly was a shootout, and they were able to keep toe to toe. And it just seemed that at the end of the day, the Battlehawks just had that extra foot in the door to kind of seal the game away. But I think it shows that certainly there were some challenges for the Renegades week one that didn't really lead to a good contest with the Stallions, but they're starting to build on those mistakes. And something that I always say is, like, if you don't make mistakes, you'll never learn from them. So if you're a perfect team and you go into the locker room thinking, okay, well, we're doing everything right, you may not know some of the things that may cause your team to break down in a game. So making sometimes these mistakes early on in a season can really help teams build and shape up through the next couple weeks to really become that team that they need to be to make that push for that off-season placement and even the championship game. So I thought this was a great showing from Arlington to stand up to the Battlehawks. Obviously, they lost, But it makes it seem a little bit more within reach for them to take them down the next time they play each other. And who knows, that may ultimately be the game for the conference, later
Yeah.
in the season. So it was just really good to see both of them, both teams playing well, but the Renegades keeping up with them, where it seemed in week one they weren't able to really keep up with the Stallions. So a lot of improvement with Arlington, even though they didn't get the win. Um, they're headed in the right direction, and I would agree with the Roughnecks. They're kind of in that same boat. They're struggling still in some areas, but they're heading in the right direction to make a season turnaround. Um, Hopefully next week for both of us. So
Yeah,
yeah,
no, for sure. But I think you just made a really good point there that when the Renegades and the Battlehawks play each other next, that very well may determine who gets into the playoffs because the defenders don't seem very competitive as of right now. I know they just beat the Roughnecks, but that was on a Roughnecks bad day, and they
yeah,
barely won that game. And they lost pretty bad the previous week. I don't know. They just don't seem to be in the same form that they were last year. I probably have them last right now in terms of my XFL division power rankings. I think you're probably going to see the Brahmas take that first spot in the division because they just seem like a powerhouse right now. And then that second spot is going to be a tussle probably between the Battlehawks and the Renegades. So, later in the season, that next game might end up being what determines who gets that second spot, who gets to make the playoffs this year. So that's a great point.
yeah, absolutely. Kind of shifting over to our NFL teams. Not really a lot of crazy news coming out of Tennessee recently in Nashville, Music City. Um, there's obviously still celebrating some of those acquisitions this offseason, whether it's Legarius Sneed, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, Lloyd Cushenberry. Uh, yeah, obviously, I think, the Titans are preparing for the draft. They're kind of doing their due diligence, getting ready as it's only a couple weeks away. But something that kind of came up recently is interviewing Legarius Sneed. He kind of made the comment that he's never had two elite wide receivers like Hopkins and Ridley on a team for him. And I think that's something that certainly uh, gives me as a Titans fan and us as in Titans Nation hope that this is the process into building a contender. And obviously, there was those questions about if Hopkins and Ridley are the guys. Of course, they're older wide receivers. They're talented veterans, but how long do we have them in the building? And it's just kind of good to hear someone who's on the defensive side of the ball who covers the top wide receivers in the game, complimenting the guys that are in the same locker room. And obviously, I know that, it's kind of common for people to do that. But I think for Snead to say something in regards to Hopkins and Ridley, in the way that he said it, that he'd never had two elite wide receivers like them before on the one roster, I think it really shows that he is really excited about how far the Titans could even go this season. And if they play their cards right in the draft, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. Of course, the Texans are going to be a tough team to play against. We don't really know what the Colts are doing just as of yet. And the Jaguars seem to be falling off, but that division is still able to be, fought over and sought after. So it's not going to certainly be an easy battle, that's for sure. But certainly they have some key players at key positions that they didn't have last year. So I think that this Titans team could really go far if Will Levis is that guy, which I think he is. But that's the big question mark. If he continues to excel like I think he will, then I think the sky's the limit for the Titans. But I really loved what Snead said about Hopkins and Ridley, and I think it really kind of shows the rest of the NFL that, hey, these guys might be older, but they certainly can go out there and ball.
Yeah, man, Carson, I got to admit, I'm jealous of you. Like, if you had told me a month ago that one of our two teams was going to sign Tony Pollard to a contract and then also go out and get a center and then otherwise have a quiet offseason, putting good pieces around their quarterback for the future, I would have been like, great. I can't believe the Cowboys are going to do that. But obviously, the Cowboys didn't do that. It's the Titans who signed Tony Pollard and are now adding a bunch of pieces around their quarterback to go win. The Cowboys, on the other hand, they've had a few fun headlines over the past week or so. The first, this news just broke today. Apparently, CeeDee Lamb is going to be holding out from off-season activities until he gets a new deal done. Honestly, I don't blame CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb should have gotten a contract extension a year ago. It should not have taken this long to get this figured out. If they had extended CeeDee Lamb before free agency started, they would have had another $15 million in cap space to use. They would have been able to go out and at least sign one or two more free agents if they had gotten this done with CeeDee Lamb. I don't know why they're dragging their feet. What more does he need to show you? You know, he's never missed a game because of injury. He's arguably the best wide receiver in football. He's only 24. He's been a great teammate. He's never had any off the field issues. What does he need to do to earn a contract? I mean, he is arguably the best player, only 24 at his position, and it's one of the most valuable positions in the game, and you still won't pay him? What are you
Yeah.
doing? You didn't sign any free agents because you said you were saving all this money to go pay your own guys. Well, pay your guys. Come on, at least do that part, you know? Oh man, please don't upset CeeDee Lamb. We need CeeDee Lamb. He's so
What's going
good.
to happen if he doesn't get what he wants in a contract wise?
I
Does
mean,
this have any effect on this season for him or
well, I think it wouldn't be great if he sat out all of training camp. I mean,
yeah.
usually players who do that end up with like soft tissue injuries, you know, like pulling their hamstrings, that sort of thing, stuff that can keep him out for weeks. You know, and if he doesn't get a contract extension this offseason, I can't imagine he'd be very happy with the Cowboys front office next year, or want
Mhm.
to negotiate with them or give them any sort of leniency or, you know, hometown discount. Uh, Man, that would just make things really messy. And I could see if we fail to extend him this offseason, opening up a door for him to leave or even be traded next year, because I think
Yeah.
next year would be his fifth year option. So that would be his last year under contract with the Cowboys, unless we franchise tag him, which I don't think would happen because I just think he'd be very unhappy playing under those conditions. So Cowboys, I just come on. You got to make this right. You have to extend him. Please do it soon before the start of the season. Clear up some cap space for yourself and give this young star wide receiver, arguably again, who is the best at the in the entire league at that position right now, the contract that he deserves. I mean, I can't think of a wide receiver I'd have on my team right now rather than CeeDee Lamb. I mean,
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill is great, but he's, you know, approaching 30. He's not going to be around much longer. AJ Brown, locker room problems. Jamar Chase is good, but he's never been as good as CeeDee Lamb was last year. So who would you rather have? I think CeeDee Lamb is the top guy, and they got to get this extension done. Another possible superstar that could be traded. Uh, Another report came out like a couple days ago that a Cowboys insider told a Cowboys reporter that the Cowboys are growing impatient with Micah Parsons, and you know, that they don't necessarily want him around anymore because they see him as bad for the locker room. They see him as annoying to deal with, and oh man, that was heartbreaking to hear because Micah Parsons, he's the quarterback of the defense. If he leaves, our defense will collapse. It would be like watching, you know, a UFL defense every Sunday for the Cowboys because he is the guy that makes it go. Um, he's the only really amazing pass rusher we have who's under the age of 30. You know, we have two good corners in Bland and Diggs, but outside of those two guys, I mean, Micah Parsons is the superstar on that defense. Uh, I don't care if he's annoying. I don't care if his off the field stuff rubs some of the front office people the wrong way. Cowboys, you have to keep him. Whatever you trade him for, it's not going to be worth it. He's the best pass rusher in football. And he's only 23 or 24. You have two players who are in their prime, very young, best in the league at their position, at some of the most important positions, and you're not paying them or extending them and considering getting rid of them instead. Oh man, it's terrible to see as a Cowboys fan. Like every other team in the league, they make it their business to try and get players like that. We have those players. Please just don't get rid of them for dumb reasons like this. Give them the money they deserve. I know the cap can be difficult to manage sometimes, but what else are you going to spend it on? There's nothing more valuable than a young, super talented edge rusher or a young, super talented wide receiver. That's what you should be spending your money on. Please, Cowboys, don't mess this up.
Yeah. It's certainly very interesting, what Jerry Jones is kind of doing this offseason with the Cowboys, especially after, um, I mean, embarrassing is kind of the right word, but tragic could be another one. Exit out of the postseason for them after a pretty stellar season. Um, I would think that, a team of that caliber would try to uh plug the holes that they experienced, especially in the postseason, and try to win with the roster now because we're reaching the end of Dak Prescott's contract. You're kind of reaching the end of some of these other things that may be going on. This may be your last year in terms of a shot at a Super Bowl with the roster that you have right now. And I get that you have obviously future plans. There's Trey Lance that you could potentially build around in the near future. Um, maybe it's a tear everything all down and rebuild it back up. But it just seems like rather than going those two routes, which seems to benefit most teams, whether it is let's plug the holes that we have that are just minimal to try to really perfect this roster in a way to see if we can, get over those hurdles of postseason trauma that just ends us knocking us out of the playoffs, or rip it all down right now and just start the rebuild. There's this like weird kind of sense that I feel like the Cowboys are just in between, and they're liking to be in between, and they're watching their good players leave, and they're not really rebuilding anything, and so they're gonna have a semi worse team that they had last year, and then you're hoping to go, all in on that team to make the playoffs. And then, of course, you have, Jerry Jones saying the same thing of like, oh, it's we're if we don't do anything next year, then we're going to reevaluate some of those players. Well, you're not really. How do you reevaluate those players on a generally worser team? Obviously, we don't know how the draft's going to shape up. Maybe you can grab some people there, but how are you going to evaluate someone like Dak Prescott when he has now less people around him than he did the year before that he can compete with? Obviously, he's going to have to be 10, if not 15 times better to make up for that. So I don't know what the Cowboys are doing. It's obviously very concerning. I feel for you, Rob. I'm sorry that the Titans are making all these moves and it's all woo, it's all crazy up in Nashville. But the Cowboys are really sleeping on and especially in a free agency where there's a lot of talent, a lot of players that could have been very helpful for a potential Cowboys Super Bowl push for this upcoming season. But hey, you know what? Maybe they have a master plan in their back pockets. Maybe they have the people in the draft that we just need this guy or something. So maybe there is some positives with it, but it's not looking good, looking very bleak.
Yeah, I tell you what, it seems like their plan right now is to hit a home run in the draft, which, okay, they've done that more than once in the past in recent years. They're pretty good at the draft, but to have that be your plan to even be competitive this year is ridiculous. Every other team is making sure that they have all their holes filled so that way they can just draft the best player available when it comes time to make their pick. The Cowboys have multiple holes on their roster that they now have to fill through the draft, which is the worst way you could possibly approach it because what if, the Cowboys need a left tackle? Let's say they're determined to get a starting left tackle in the first round. What if all the left tackles are taken, but there's like a super great defensive tackle or a super great corner or a super great wide receiver there? Well, you still can't take any of those three guys because you're relying on the draft to fill that hole on your roster. So now you have to go draft a left tackle. It's
Mhm.
just disgusting to see what they're doing right now. And if you were to ask me why are they doing this, I don't think I could give you an answer. I don't think any NFL person right now could give you an answer. It doesn't make any sense to any external observer, and it's definitely really tough to watch. Long term, I do think both CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons will be staying in Dallas, but it shouldn't be this difficult to get that done, right? These are guys who have never done anything wrong. All they've done is win games for you, and now you need to go pay them and make sure that they don't go anywhere else. Please, it should not be hard. Just get that done. I know you haven't been able to do a lot lately, but get that done at least for the love of God.
Yeah. Kind of speaking about off-season moves, there was also a kind of bigger trade that recently happened with the Texans acquiring Stephon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills. Um, Rob, do you think that the addition of Stephon Diggs pushes the Texans into contention with the Chiefs for the AFC this year?
No, I don't. I think the Texans already were there. Adding Stephon Diggs, I don't, to me, it doesn't really move the needle. Everyone's so hyped about this trade. They're like, oh my God, the Texans got Stephon Diggs. It's going to make them so much better. I don't think it will. Stephon Diggs had 40 yards a game for the last 7 games he had with the Buffalo Bills. Didn't get a single touchdown. He's washed. It's that simple. I mean, if Josh Allen is your quarterback, you're not going out there and performing. who will you perform for? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me why people are so excited about this guy when he's clearly been slowing down, not just this past year, but the 2 years previous. I don't think he's going to move the needle at all for Houston. I think he's going to end up being one of the bigger busts that they have. And I think there's a reason that Houston decided to cut 2 years off his deal and make it a 1 year contract for him. So that way he can leave next year. I think they understand that they're probably not getting the Stephon Diggs all the media are talking about right now. They're probably getting a lesser version of Stephon Diggs. Um, but I don't know if the NFL in general is aware of that yet. So when they go put him out there, I think you could definitely see like him draw the opposing team's number one cornerback, which will create
Mhm.
more opportunities for guys like Nico Collins and Tank Dell and Dalton Schultz. So even though, I don't think he's going to be the most productive player on their team this year in terms of catching passes, he can still certainly have a positive impact. And I think the Texans made the right move in trading for him because once he walks next year, they'll get a compensatory pick, which will make up partially for the second round pick they gave up in the first place to get him. So, at the end of the day, instead of giving up a second round pick, it's more like a trade down in exchange for Stephon Diggs for 1 year of Stephon Diggs. And when you're going all in, like the Texans actually are, unlike the Cowboys, you do take chances like this where you go get a wide receiver like Stephon Diggs who might be on a downhill, trend in his career, but can still help your team out. I don't think he moves the needle that much because again, I think he's just not as good as people say he is. But I still like the aggressiveness from the Texans, and I still think overall he will contribute to them having a better season this year. And I think the Texans, independent of their move with Stephon Diggs, are right up there with the Chiefs in terms of contending to be an AFC Super Bowl team this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that the Texans already had those pieces there to compete with the likes of the Chiefs, to compete with any of the top teams in the AFC this year. That defense, they added so many more pieces and acquired so many players that's going to be scary. And then you look on the offensive side of the ball, and they already have weapons. And I think you're absolutely right, Rob. I think, Stephon Diggs isn't, everyone's making him out to be that he's going to be this 1,000 yard plus receiver for the Texans, the new wide receiver one. I don't think so either. I think that he could clearly make defenses question whether or not or how much they cover him, which could provide openings for some of the younger guys on that roster. I honestly think that's probably going to be his main role. And of course, he's a competent enough receiver that he can make a play here or there if open. So, absolutely, I think this is a smart move by the Texans, but I do agree. I think that they are already in contention with the Chiefs or any of the top other teams in the AFC. And this just, it adds more fuel to the fire. But it wasn't anything crazy for the Texans. I think the Texans acquiring who they did on defense was push them much more into contention with the Chiefs than this Stephon Diggs trade. Now, the interesting thing, though, Rob, is that with the Bills losing Stephon Diggs, do you think that the Bills will be contenders in the AFC East this next season?
I mean, when you have a guy like Josh Allen at quarterback, I think you're always a contender no matter what, because I personally am a huge fan of Josh Allen. I think, his whole too many turnovers thing last year was way overrated because if you looked at his turnover worthy play rate, which I think is a much more accurate indicator of how like uncareful a quarterback is being with a football because it's not, subjective to things like chance, like an interception or a fumble might be. It was the lowest of his career. So I think the amount of turnovers we had last year was just kind of like a statistical fluke, the way it was with Dak Prescott 2 years ago. And I think
Mhm.
he's still a top five quarterback right now. When you have one of those guys, no matter how bad the rest of your roster is, they can elevate your team and win you a lot of games. Are they going to be contenders to the Super Bowl? Probably not. I mean, unless they really go out and get aggressive about adding pieces through the draft and the rest of the offseason here through trades, maybe. Maybe they could turn things around. But I certainly think they could contend to win the AFC East. I mean, the Jets, if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, maybe they'll be a little competitive. The Dolphins, they couldn't really beat any good teams last year. So who knows what they're going to be this year now that they lost all those key pieces like Christian Wilkins. The Patriots are a hot mess. Um, I don't think there's any reason why the Bills couldn't be division winners this year in the AFC East for sure.
Yeah. What I think is something that's super interesting is the Bills kind of cleaned house. when it came to the wide receiver room. Gabe Davis obviously went to the Jaguars. I didn't think he was that good. Obviously, he came clutch in some moments, but I don't think that he was going to be the deciding factor for the Bills moving forward. And we obviously knew that there was something going on between Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen. There was something there. And of course, we'll never know what it is because they're smart enough players to not bring it up to the press. But there was something that went on that obviously didn't allow them to make their relationship on the same team work. I think we saw those struggles last year, and I think that that certainly has something to play. I think the Bills are playing their cards super smart right now because last season we saw the Packers with pretty much nobody at wide receiver, added a bunch of young wide receivers. They obviously felt strong enough about their quarterback in Jordan Love that they did everything that they did last season and made that playoff push because they had that quarterback. And I think the Bills could even be doing something very similar. And I think this could be something very scary for not only the AFC East, but also the AFC, is this idea that if you have your quarterback, who you're paying, of course, a lot of money, maybe you don't need to pay receivers 20 million some dollars a year for some of the best guys. What if you pick up young players in the draft or acquire them similar to what the Packers were able to do, and you can go win a Super Bowl that way? That could be the new formula that some of these teams, after seeing what the Packers were able to do, maybe trying to work in. Because of course we all know Josh Allen is a top quarterback. That obviously is an unquestionable fact. Can they put around cheaper options around him? That could be the key for the Bills to finally win. And maybe that's something that they're going to be experimenting with in the draft. So yeah, I don't know. I think it could be absolutely interesting to see what they do in the draft. I absolutely think they'll go wide receiver in the first round, if not later rounds too, to just acquire some of these younger guys that are going to be cheap overall to have. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that they make a splash in the AFC East. It's going to be tough though, because I do think the Jets are going to be a powerhouse, and I do think with it really depends on Aaron Rodgers what he's able to do. But if Aaron Rodgers comes back, plays a whole season with the Jets, I think that they can be certainly scary in the AFC East this year. But yeah, the Dolphins and Patriots, there's question marks next to them. So I think absolutely they can be, but I think it all starts with the draft for them. If they knock it out of the park with the draft, they can do it. If they don't, I think it's going to be we're gonna see a struggling Bills team all season.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, think about it like this. If they go in the draft and they add a guy like Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, who I love, who a lot of people, they say he's like CeeDee Lamb, except faster. That's his draft comp. And then they also, after the draft, go and trade for a guy like T. Higgins or Brandon Ayuk. I mean, we might be revisiting this conversation like a few weeks from now and talking about them as, the favorite in the AFC, not just the AFC East.
Yeah.
So they certainly have the time and the opportunity to go ahead, be aggressive at wide receiver and turn their team back into a formidable contender the way it has been in years past, even while still missing some pieces on their defense. Once they get those wide receivers for a quarterback like Josh Allen, I mean, that's always a scary thing, no matter what your defense looks like. So I'd be very interested to see what happens at their wide receiver position over the next few months here.
Yeah.
Uh, Switching over to the XFL conference, we were just talking about powerhouses. The Brahmas have been on a tear lately. 2-0. They've just looked absolutely dominant in both games they've played so far. Carson, do you think the Brahmas are going to win the XFL conference in the UFL this year?
I think that it's going to be close, but I'm going to say no. I think that the Battlehawks probably still have the best odds to win the XFL conference. Now, don't get me wrong, the Brahmas have certainly outplayed, I think, everybody's expectations of them, especially ours. We had them dead last in our pre-week one power rankings. Did not really expect them to shoot up. One thing I will say about this Brahmas team, which I think can push them in contention to win the XFL conference. I still have my money on the Battlehawks, though. I think with what they were able to do this past week shows them evolving into the powerhouse that we kind of thought they were going to be. And with Pearson coming back in the later weeks, I think that it's just going to be a lock that they're going to be a little bit unstoppable. So I still think the Battlehawks still have the edge, but I think the Brahmas can stay right there with them. This team showed fight against the Showboats. They literally scored 20 points in the fourth quarter, which is what brought them back to win that game in a spectacular finish, uh, basically leading to the ending seconds of the game. They were able to throw that game-winning touchdown. Crazy stuff. But but the Brahmas wouldn't quit. That was something that I thought was super interesting in that Showboats Brahmas game, especially when the home crowd was against you. They kind of came out and they defied expectations. I feel like a lot of people thought that the Showboats at home were going to take care of the Brahmas. They had a little fluke of a win against a struggling defenders team in week one, but they really came out and they solidified themselves to being a 2-0 team. And I think that that's something that will keep them a dangerous team moving forward. So do I think they're going to win the XFL conference? I think the Battlehawks have the edge over them in the long run. But it's been super fun to watch Chase Garbers and the rest of the Brahmas crew being able to come out and really play higher than our expectations in regards to what we thought they were going to be this season. So I would say it's going to be a pretty close run, but I still think Battlehawks will be one. Brahmas will be number two when it comes to the XFL conference. And then who knows? Maybe they'll play it out. Maybe the Brahmas will upset the Battlehawks and go to the final. But as I'm looking at right now, I think the Battlehawks are still the stronger choice.
Yeah, I think I'm still probably leaning towards the Battlehawks as well. I think they just have a better overall roster. They have a better quarterback. They're going to have the best wide receivers in the league once Ja'Cory Pearson comes back, if they don't already. Their defense has been kind of suspect through the first two games, but they managed to overcome that last week, and I think it'll only get better as we go along here in the season. And I also think maybe this is just my bias talking, but I don't think we can count the Renegades out yet as a team that might be a threat later down the stretch. I don't think they'll win the division. I think that'll either be the Battlehawks or the Brahmas, but I could see them sneaking into that number two spot, especially, if it comes down to a final week 10 game or something like that, where, the records are tied and whoever wins that game decides who goes into the playoffs. Maybe they won't get their stuff sorted out in 2 weeks from now. This will be on our Redzone Rodeo Clowns of the Week segment as a terrible take. But I certainly wouldn't rule out the Renegades yet either as a possible playoff contender. But I still absolutely think the Brahmas will probably not win the division. I think the Battlehawks will, and then you might see the Renegades slide in at the number two spot, leaving the Brahmas out of the playoffs entirely. But I wouldn't be surprised if they, made the playoffs either at the number two spot. I think right now that's probably the fair way to have it ranked: is Battlehawks one, Brahmas two, Renegades three, and then Defenders four. Even though the Renegades haven't won a game yet, I still think they played better so far than the Defenders have. So
Yeah.
yeah, certainly. I agree with you. I think the Battlehawks will be winning the XFL conference this year.
Well, flipping things over to the USFL conference, um, Rob, are the Stallions the team to beat when it comes to that conference?
Yeah, no, they have to be. I think this is probably one of the things we nailed in our preseason show, the episode we did right before. We said we thought the Stallions would effortlessly win the USFL conference. I think that's probably what's going to happen here. Their team just seems so complete right now. Martinez was throwing the ball way better than he did week one to complement that amazing running game the Stallions already have. Their defense looked phenomenal. Cowboys legend, former first round pick, Taco Charlton was lighting it up on the defensive side of the ball for them, had several sacks, including one to end the game. Their roster just seems complete. They seem ready. They're all working in sync, probably because, they've been together for so many years now. They just seem like a team that's ready to go out there and dominate anyone who's lined up across them. And I think there's a real chance we could be looking at them as an undefeated team this year. I'm really excited to see them play against the Battlehawks. When that game happens, I feel like that'll probably be the biggest opportunity for them to lose a game in the regular season this year. But absolutely, I think they will very easily cruise to a victory in the USFL conference and represent them in the title game this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they certainly are the team to beat. I think there's still some questions. Of course, they've only played the Panthers and the Renegades. As of right now, still a part of the bottom four in regards to levels of high play as of now. Um, when they played them, of course, respectively. I do think the Stallions are going to run into some tough games. I think this upcoming week when they play the Showboats, I think that's going to be certainly a good game because I think Case Cookus can keep right in there. But I do think the Stallions definitely have the edge, especially in the USFL conference. I think they're the team to beat. I would 100% agree. I don't think that they are unbeatable, like you said, Rob. I think that um, they certainly can have weaknesses that can be exploited. I don't think they've really played a top defense until we saw them play against the Panthers this past weekend. And in that game, the Panthers defense really came out, and obviously they weren't able to shut down everything the Stallions were doing, but they did hold them to only 20 points. And I think the main reason that the Panthers just really couldn't keep in it is just their offense is just still not great. So I would be interested, in seeing how they're able to compete for the rest of the season because not only do they have to play the Panthers again against another stellar defense, but they have to play the Roughnecks twice as well. And the Roughnecks also have a really good defense that has been stopping high scoring teams from really being able to score big. So I think that they're certainly going to have some issues running into some of their other teams in the conference, but it's hard to say that they're gonna win any less than the majority of their games because they just seem, as we've been talking, so complete. So unless there's a team that steps up and beats them in one of these next upcoming weeks, they certainly are going to be the team to beat in the USFL conference.
Yeah, no, they absolutely deserve to be that favorite team. As much as it pains me to say that, I cannot stand them. They have beaten my favorite team in the season opener of spring football 3 years in a row. God, it's so just it's sad. It's so
It
sad to
is.
me.
Yeah.
Talking about the Stallions though, they have one of the better attendance records in the UFL so far. But the Battlehawks and the Defenders have been the two biggest draws in terms of in-person attendance to games so far. So Carson, do you think these other teams, these other stadiums might eventually start catching up to the Battlehawks and the Defenders in terms of in-person attendance?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. We haven't had a Stallions home game yet until this upcoming week. So this upcoming weekend they'll actually be playing their first home game, which will be against the Memphis Showboats, as I mentioned earlier. But yeah, there's been some concern, I would say, especially with Memphis, with Houston, Michigan, those locations as being not yielding the most uh, people in attendance. But I think that, a lot of people are missing out on the larger picture here because you have to understand that the UFL isn't the only thing going on at this moment as we're speaking. Of course, with the Battlehawks and the Defenders, those were two really, really great um, fan attending games. All of the XFL season last year, the Beer Snake in DC, and of course St. Louis. With ever since they lost the Rams, we talked about this before. They have kind of embraced the Battlehawks as their football team, and they show out for them. The Defenders kind of do the same. I think that that definitely the Birmingham Stallions are going to get a loaded crowd, of course, as they have pretty much played a lot of their home games there, especially with the first inaugural USFL season only being in Birmingham. I think that had a lot of attention for that team. But I think that the attendance of some of these other places will certainly go up as the season goes on. Mainly because, right now we had all of March Madness, men's and women's, people obviously wanting to go to see those games that they're interested in. Of course, with this also being the first ever UFL season, um, it certainly is going to be, I think, lower numbers and only will increase. So I absolutely agree. I think that some of these other stadium locations will yield better attendance. It may not this season to keep up with the Battlehawks and Defenders, but I do think in the near future they will when this league solidifies itself in the spring.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my take on it too. I don't expect there to be huge jumps in attendance numbers for these other stadiums yet, not in this first season. But as the brand of the UFL grows and as these teams grow and as they, last longer than one season, hopefully, and prove themselves as like, core components of a certain city's like sports network, I think you'll certainly see attendance go up, hopefully much higher than it is right now. I think the Stallions will probably be the only team to really rival, the Battlehawks and the Defenders in terms of in-person attendance. Because, like you talked about, they've been playing in Birmingham for years now. They've kind of had a chance to build that attendance up, and they're also, two-time world champions or whatever. So that means they also have that draw going for them. I think you might see some of these teams that aren't playing so well right now struggle to bring in attendance, like the Arlington Renegades, for instance. I don't know how much attention they'll draw, given that they're 0-2 right now. But if they
Mhm.
start winning some games, Dallas is a huge market, so I'm sure those attendance numbers will increase if they manage to turn things around. Um, but for this season, I don't think we'll see a huge change in what the attendance numbers are right now, just because, like you said, it's the first year, still growing, but in later years, I'm certain that those numbers will be far better than they are right now.
Yeah, and I'm also interested too because, especially for the Roughnecks and the Renegades, their season openers at home were during Easter weekend. And of course, you already have some families who are like, you know what? We're not going to go to a football game on Easter weekend. We're going to spend time with our family. We may watch the game on TV, we may have it playing and whatnot, but we're not going to go. So I expect these next upcoming weeks when the Renegades and the Roughnecks go and play at home again, I expect the crowds to be even more. And honestly, the amount of people that they even got, especially for the Roughnecks on Easter Sunday at a 2 o'clock game, was crazy. I think in order to get that many people spending their Easter Sunday out there at Rice Stadium. So yeah, I think this can only go up from there. So really great things to look forward to, and really competitive league, which I've been super super excited to watch. So can't wait for week 3, that's for sure. So kind of switching things over a little bit, um, we have the NFL draft coming up in a couple weeks. I know I'm excited for it. Rob's excited for it. Probably countless numbers of the NFL community is excited to see the new acquisitions that all of our teams uh, will be attaining this upcoming draft. And I think that this draft is certainly going to be a crazy one in terms of move ups and move arounds and trade ups and trades and whatnot. Lots of loaded talent in a lot of different places that certain teams need. And I think we're going to see a lot of that going on. So I know that we already did our kind of first ever mock draft a couple weeks ago, where we kind of went back and forth. But we're going to actually be doing our complete first round mock draft, official Red Zone Rodeo. These are who we think will be picked at the locations and whatnot, and we're gonna run through them for you. So we're gonna, we're not gonna spend hours on this like I've seen some other channels doing. We're just gonna do a quick rundown of who we think these teams and how I should really say who we think the first round or how we think the first round is gonna play out. So without further ado, this is going to be the Red Zone Rodeo most updated, most recent mock draft in preparation for the upcoming draft in a couple weeks. And at number 1, as this is going to be a super big surprise for everybody, we have the Bears taking Caleb Williams. Obviously, I think this is the best overall pick for them. Um, it seems like they've been set up to pick this for a while now, especially with the Justin Fields trade. It's pretty much a no-brainer. Caleb Williams going first overall to Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I can't remember the last time a quarterback was hyped as much coming out of college as Caleb Williams has been. For years now, they've been talking about what he's going to do in the NFL. So that's really exciting. Number 2, we have this year's Heisman winner, Jaden Daniels out of LSU, going to the Washington Commanders. They really need a quarterback. In my opinion, Jaden Daniels played the best out of any quarterback this year. So they go ahead and take him there to solve that problem. And hopefully, with Coach Dan Quinn, turn things around next year.
At number 3, we're already starting to see some shakeup in terms of the board, and we're going to actually see a trade already at number 3. So what we're thinking is New England doesn't like the other quarterback prospects on the board, and they much rather trade back to just get more draft capital, get more draft picks, maybe fill out some other holes in their roster. And we see them trading with Minnesota. So we have Minnesota trading up to number 3, and they will be trading their Minnesota will be trading the Patriots their 11th and 23rd pick so that they can go up and select JJ McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan. We think that there's been a lot of hype, especially with the Vikings in regards to JJ McCarthy. Very comparable to what Kirk Cousins was for them for the past couple years. So we think that this is the guy that they're going to want to shape their hopes around. Pretty big surprise, but we think that the Vikings will get that trade done with New England, taking JJ McCarthy at number 3.
Yeah, and like we talked about on last week's episode, this trade point right here is kind of like the linchpin to the rest of the draft because what happens right here at this pick is going to determine everything that happens after it. So that is what we're projecting for pick number 3. Pick number 4 is where we kind of got a little creative. Those first 3 picks are pretty standard for most NFL mock drafts. Here at number 4, we had the Cardinals considering taking Marvin Harrison Jr., but they decided against it. The Cardinals, we have them trading back with the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders trade Devontae Adams and their first round pick to the Cardinals to move up to number 4 to select their quarterback of the future. We have the Raiders taking Drake May. This is definitely a little out there because the Raiders moving on from Devontae Adams after their owner said that he wanted Devontae to be in Las Vegas for the rest of his career. Not necessarily the most popular prediction right now, but it certainly seems like there's some friction there between Devontae Adams and the Raiders. And if you're in rebuild mode like the Raiders are, in both of our opinions, it might make sense to move on from an aging player, who's not in the highlight of his career anymore, someone who's super expensive in favor of younger, cheaper options, especially if that move will help you go get your young quarterback of the future. So we have the Cardinals filling their wide receiver need and trading back for more draft capital in order to fill other needs that they have this season as well.
So at number 5, with pretty much any of the wide receivers on the board, we have pretty much, of course, if with those quarterbacks being taken 3 and 4, we have the Chargers taking the top wide receiver on the board, Marvin Harrison Jr. This is going to obviously fix, not really fix, but it'll fill a lot of holes that the Chargers lost at wide receiver, giving Justin Herbert that kind of go-to guy that he's being kind of hyped up to be. So number 5, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, the Giants, we know they're very interested in JJ McCarthy and some of these top quarterbacks, but with McCarthy and Drake May and Jaden Daniels all off the board, they decided to go wide receiver with Malik Neighbors, arguably, just as good as Marvin Harrison Jr., sitting there staring at them in the face. They take Malik Neighbors, wide receiver out of LSU at number 6.
At number 7, that's my Titans pick. We've talked this over. There's a lot of things that they could do with this pick. But I still strongly believe that Brock Bowers will be taken at number 7 for the Titans. I think that, I just have this hunch that the Titans are wanting to put all the weapons around Will Levis as possible. Of course, tackle is an important position with Joe Alt being still on that board. But I think that with this draft being very, heavy in regards to the offensive line positions, I feel like the Titans will end up picking up a couple other guys later in the round. And I feel like skipping out on Brock Bowers is going to be a mistake for the Titans. So I think at 7, with him being still there, the Titans are going to be selecting Brock Bowers out of Georgia.
So number 8 is a pick that originally belonged to the Atlanta Falcons. But we think the Falcons will definitely want to go defense with their first pick in this year's draft because they desperately need defensive line help. And seeing that not a single defensive player has been taken yet and realizing they'll probably be able to get a good defensive lineman a little bit later in the draft, we have the Falcons trading back with the Cincinnati Bengals. We have the Bengals sending to the Falcons T. Higgins and their first round pick in exchange to move up to where the Falcons are. T. Higgins, probably leaving Cincinnati sometime before the season starts because he's on the franchise tag, which he doesn't want to play on. And the Bengals don't really have the money to extend him. The Falcons, on the other hand, they kind of need that wide receiver 1 to go opposite of Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore for Kirk Cousins. T. Higgins would be that guy. Absolutely. He automatically makes the Falcons wide receiver core one of the best in the league. And he allows the Falcons to spend their first round pick on a defensive lineman, which they desperately need. So we have the Bengals trading up to number 8 with the Falcons to select Romo Dunze, the wide receiver out of Washington, to replace T. Higgins.
At number 9, we have the Bears. Of course, they spent their first overall pick on Caleb Williams. We think that this pick is going to be leaning more towards the defensive side to kind of just balance things out. And one of the kind of top edge rushers that is in this class is Leatu Latu out of UCLA. So we think that the Bears thinking about going defensively, adding someone to kind of help out in terms of getting defensively to stop whatever the offensive protection is on the other side of the ball. So number 9, the Bears are picking Leatu Latu. I believe that's
Yeah.
how you pronounce his name.
Yep, Latu. Definitely, in my opinion, the best pure edge rusher in the entire draft. But he does have some medical stuff, although it seems like teams are not as concerned about that as people originally thought. At number 10, we have the New York Jets. So Joe Alt, who in most mock drafts is usually a top 5 pick, has slid down mostly because of the run on quarterback and wide receiver to this selection. And while the Jets do have 2 starting tackles for this year, they're both old, they're both injury prone. In Tyrone Smith, who they stole away from the Dallas Cowboys, and I think the other one was, I don't remember what his name is, but he's also kind of up there in age and also sort of injury prone at right tackle. So seeing the best offensive lineman in the entire draft still on the board fall to them at number 10, it's a no-brainer. They need to go get a guy to protect Aaron Rodgers in the event that one of these 2 older tackles, gets hurt, and they need to have a guy to succeed these older tackles once they retire or leave. So the New York Jets select Joe Alt at number 10.
At number 11, which the Patriots now have, as they have traded with the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, with some of those top quarterbacks already gone, in J.J. McCarthy, Drake May, obviously they didn't want him to first and foremost. I really feel like the Patriots are going to be looking at trying to fill some of these other roles. And one of the top cornerbacks in this draft, someone who I've been watching season after season play for my Hawkeyes, is Cooper DeJean. Coop, I think, is a great cornerback. He's really one of the top prospects right now and can easily be one of the top cornerbacks in the league for whichever team drafts him. I think honestly only the best things can happen when he's on your defense. And I could absolutely see the Patriots grabbing him at number 11, especially with them feeling that they don't have their quarterback yet. They don't have the guy that they want to take. Trading back to get him to have on your defense to complement some of your other cornerbacks, I think is going to be a very smart play to really building up this Patriots defense, which is something that you could count on for even future seasons if you want to get your quarterback of the future, maybe in another draft or whatnot. So number 11, the Patriots are grabbing Cooper DeJean out of Iowa.
I don't even know how you'd be able to pass on a secondary that has DeJean and Christian Gonzalez, who they got in the first round last year. That would be a very scary 1-2 punch there at corner for the Patriots. Number 12, we have the Denver Broncos. We talked about this last week with Bro Nix. So the Broncos are certainly looking for their next Drew Brees type quarterback because Sean Payton's there, and we know Sean Payton loved Drew Brees. And Bo Nix is the guy that fits that mold. So we think the Denver Broncos will be selecting Bo Nix, the quarterback out of Oregon, at number 12.
So at number 13, we have the Arizona Cardinals that obviously have now that draft pick in the first round after trading with Las Vegas and also acquiring Devontae Adams. The Cardinals honestly have a lot of holes right now, other really than Kyler Murray. There's so much things that they need to kind of fix down there in Arizona. So we think that, with Jerzon Newton just being on the board, one of the top defensive guys there. We think that the Cardinals are going to start just by taking the best player available to them to kind of help fix one of those many holes that they have.
Yeah. Number 14, we have the Saints, looking for some offensive line help. Their quarterback situation is kind of in flux right now, but there's not really anyone left on the board that they consider taking at this point. So they go ahead and take the best player on their board, offensive lineman Taliesin Fuaga, the tackle out of Oregon State.
At number 15, we have the Indianapolis Colts, kind of the same kind of thing. I feel like some of the positions that they do need to address, that some of those players have already been taken off the board, and they don't necessarily want to waste their pick here at 15. So we feel that the Colts are going to be taking Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo, which is one of uh, I would say probably second in terms of cornerbacks in the draft this year after Cooper DeJean. So getting that guy to help kind of bolster your defense is going to be a win for the Colts, even if it is not one of those top more positions that they're seeking out in the draft.
At 16, the Seahawks, they have some really great players at a lot of positions. They're pretty good at wide receiver. They're really good at cornerback, but they need some defensive line help. So we have them looking to Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama. He's a traits guy, probably has the highest ceiling of any of the edge rushers in this draft just because of his raw physical talent. I think most teams will probably have him pretty high up on their board. So the Seahawks sitting here at 16, seeing this guy available still at this pick, I think they'd probably find it hard to ignore. So we have the Seahawks at 16, taking Dallas Turner, the edge rusher out of Alabama.
At number 17, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. We think that, some of their defensive struggles has really been in the secondary, especially covering some top wide receivers. We kind of saw them fall apart a little bit in the season. So we think that at 17, Teron Arnold out of Alabama, cornerback, will be selected as he is still on the board as they're looking at it at spot number 17. He would kind of be the best player to take to kind of fulfill their needs on the defense.
Yeah, number 18, we said the Falcons have traded back to this pick from the Cincinnati Bengals. We said they're probably looking for the best defensive lineman available. And at this pick, they're taking a Byron Murphy, the three technique out of Texas. Byron Murphy is one of my by far favorite players in this draft. I think he's probably a top 10 player on most teams' boards. So I believe the Atlanta Falcons would be absolutely thrilled to land him at this spot in the draft and, bolster their defensive line a significant amount.
At number 19, we have the Los Angeles Rams taking Troy Fatanu out of Washington. We really feel strongly that they're going to be going offensive linemen here just because, they have a lot of weapons. But one of the things and one of the concerns is obviously keeping Matthew Stafford upright. And so adding depth into that offensive line is really going to be the key to success for the Rams, especially this upcoming season, competing with the San Francisco 49ers in their respective division. So at number 19, the Rams will be selecting Troy Fatanu.
Yeah, that's a really interesting pick because a lot of people project him to play guard in the NFL, which the Rams are stacked at right now. But I believe he could still be a really successful tackle, and I think he'll probably be the top offensive lineman on their board there at 19. You add him into what they already have on that offensive line, the Rams could be a terrifying unit next year. Number 20, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers adding Nate Wiggins, who tested out of this world at his combine, the cornerback out of Clemson. He ran like either a 4.2 or a 4.3, something like that, like something really insane. A lot of people have him projected to go higher, but just because of the run on players at like wide receiver and quarterback and tackle, he's managed to slide all the way to 20. And the Steelers create one of the best cornerback tandems in the league by putting Nate Wiggins opposite Joey Porter Jr., who they drafted in the second round last year.
At pick number 21, we have the Miami Dolphins taking Fashanu. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his first name because I already know I will butcher it. But Fashanu I can get out of Penn State. We think the Dolphins certainly have some help or need some help, I should say, on offensive line. They lost a lot of pieces, and of course, keeping Tua upright is going to be of dire importance for their successes this season. We all know what happens if Tua gets knocked around a little bit. He may unfortunately, you know, um, have and suffer an injury that may keep him out of the NFL. So he has to obviously be careful and keeping those protection there for him. I think this is the right move for the Dolphins at 21.
Yeah, at 22, we have the Eagles. Their secondary really, really struggled last year. They for probably one of the biggest reasons they ended up losing all those games down the stretch and letting the Cowboys come back and win the division after a rough start for them. So at 22, we have the Eagles shocked that Kool-Aid McKinstry, the corner out of Alabama, has fallen all the way to them, and they select him. Finally get a piece in that secondary that they've been desperately needing for probably a few years now. So Eagles 22, Kool-Aid McKinstry, cornerback out of Alabama.
At pick number 23, one of the picks that the Vikings also gave up to the Patriots to trade up to pick J.J. McCarthy at 3. We actually think that the Patriots might roll the dice on a quarterback. And we think that at 23, after picking up a really good defensive player in Cooper DeJean at 11, we think they're going to try to roll their dice with the quarterback and pick up Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. Certainly going to be interesting to see if he will turn into someone who can be a franchise quarterback. Of course, there's always that possibility that he can. But the Patriots might as well roll the dice here at 23. They have 2 first-round picks. They already spent the first one picking a pretty much what I think is a star defensive player in Coop DeJean. So rolling the dice on a quarterback seems just right for them here at 23.
Yeah, number 24, we have my Dallas Cowboys. I was super tempted to grab Amarius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia, because he is probably the highest ceiling tackle in this entire draft. And he was still available at this pick, but he only played 8 games at Georgia last year at left tackle. So that's not a lot of film. I don't think the Cowboys would be willing to draft someone who had that little tape in college. So I'm going to give them Graham Barton, the player out of Duke, the offensive lineman, who a lot of NFL scouts are projecting to play center in the NFL. So likely Graham Barton, who I think was mostly a tackle and a guard in college, will probably move to center for the Cowboys. They lost Tyler Biadasz in free agency, so that's a pretty big hole for them. I think the Cowboys really like him. I'm pretty sure he was a top 30 visit. So Cowboys go Graham Barton, center out of Duke.
At number 25, we have the Green Bay Packers picking with their kind of strong offense that they really kind of surprised everyone with their young talent, and especially with Jordan Love turning into the quarterback that they obviously all hoped he would be. We think that they're going to turn their eyes more to the defense and picking up another really top edge rusher in Jared Verse out of Florida State, someone to help bolster their defense, which struggled a little bit last year, hoping to kind of rewrite some of those wrongs and maybe even get them even closer into a contention, not only in the NFC North, but maybe even a deep playoff run.
Yeah. Number 26, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting J.C. Latham, the tackle out of Alabama. Latham is one of several offensive tackles who you could probably see slide inside to guard after he is selected. He really can only play on the right side of the offensive line. So I imagine if the Buccaneers select him, that's probably what they'll do. They'll take him and slide him inside to guard, where he projects to be an absolute beast as a starter in the NFL.
At number 27, we have the Cardinals again. And of course, they acquired Devontae Adams from the Las Vegas Raiders. They picked up Jerzon Newton to help defensively, but they still do need some help at wide receiver. And not only do they need help at wide receiver, but they kind of need a younger guy to kind of help build around. Of course, bringing in Devontae Adams, it will be a great addition veteran-wise, but there needs to be some young aspect. And so we think that at 27, the Cardinals will be picking Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU to kind of help bolster that wide receiver room.
28, we talked about this guy before earlier in the podcast. We have the Buffalo Bills selecting wide receiver Adonai Mitchell out of Texas. I absolutely love this guy. Big, rangy, fast. He's got everything you want in a wide receiver. I think he would be a great wide receiver one for the Buffalo Bills to go out there and get.
Number 29, we have the Detroit Lions, and we think they will be picking up cornerback out of Iowa State, TJ Tampa. Of course, with their problems when it came to cornerback last season, probably one of the reasons why they ended up failing at getting to the Super Bowl and winning it. We think that their eyes are obviously going to be turned toward filling some of those holes that were an issue for them last season. And a great start is by picking up TJ Tampa out of Iowa State.
Yeah, at number 30, we have the Baltimore Ravens. They lost Patrick Queen in free agency to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So to fill that hole, they go to the best overall linebacker in the draft, Peyton Wilson out of North Carolina State. He's definitely had some pretty big injury histories in college, so it wouldn't be surprised to see him fall all the way out of the first round into the second or the third. But if a team was just looking at his tape and his skills, he would absolutely be a first round pick. So we have the Ravens rolling the dice on him here and picking Peyton Wilson, linebacker out of North Carolina State.
At 31, we have the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, they could have gone a lot of different directions in regards to losing a number of players this offseason. But we think that at 31, they're going to be going with Jackson Powers Johnson, really good center out of Oregon this year to kind of help either rebuild or restabilize that offensive line for Brock Purdy. He's probably one of the better players on the board still, and especially looking the 49ers in the face at 31, it's almost kind of a no-brainer to go with him.
Yeah, number 32, we have Troy Franklin, the wide receiver, also out of Oregon. He has something that the Chiefs love in their wide receivers, and that's speed. He's one of the fastest guys in this year's draft. He's tall, he's lanky. He does have quite a few issues with certain other parts of his game, but he definitely fits, what the Chiefs are looking for at their wide receiver spot. So especially, with the departure of possibly Rashee Rice for legal reasons, Tyreek Hill last year, and all the struggles they had at wide receiver this past season, they definitely need to go get somebody at that position. So I feel pretty confident projecting the Chiefs will take a wide receiver, and Troy Franklin would certainly be a good fit for them there.
Well, there you have it, folks. That is our complete first round mock draft, Red Zone Rodeo edition. If you have any comments or questions or things you want to say, feel free to comment down below. We'd love to hear from you guys. If you guys think that what we're talking about is dead on, or maybe you have a different thought of a different player your team might be wanting to select, given that situation. Let us know down in the comment section. We love to hear from you guys. And of course, this is just our mock draft. You may have your own that you're doing, and that's fine. But we'll see when it comes to draft week, um, if maybe we got some of these predictions right. So yeah, always exciting to see. Moving forward, we will be going into our Red Zone Rodeo Rowdy rankings. And just like we did last week, we are going to be covering again a new week of our UFL Power Rankings. At the conclusion of week 2, we have a little bit of movement, not too great. We ended up actually getting a lot of in terms of the power rankings, getting a lot of the teams that ended up winning this past weekend. They were higher on the power rankings of our last week's power rankings than the opponent that they defeated. So kind of keeping with that, we have the Stallions at number 1. As kind of we've been talking about, they are the team to beat at the moment. And we think that until they are beaten, they are certainly the most complete team. And that is why they're sitting at number 1.
Yeah, number 2, we have another team we mentioned before, absolute powerhouse so far through the first 2 games of the season, San Antonio Brahmas. They haven't done anything to make us put them lower. So, until they lose a game or take a misstep, which doesn't seem likely right now, they will continue to be the number 2 team in these power rankings.
Creeping up a little bit higher than last week, we have the St. Louis Battlehawks. Now, we fully expect them to keep on climbing up the power rankings with every game they play. They're certainly turning into the team that we thought they would be at the close of week 2. Obviously, they didn't play perfectly, so there's still some questions, but they are certainly shaping up to be a top team in this league, and we have them sitting at number 3 for this week.
Number 4, we have the Showboats. Case Cookus has been great through the first 2 weeks of the season. They've had a little bit of shakiness on the defensive side of the ball, but it certainly seems like they have an offense that can go out there and compete with just about anyone. So right now, Memphis Showboats, number 4 team on our power rankings.
At number 5, we have the DC Defenders. They certainly didn't play a perfect game against the Roughnecks, but they certainly ended up playing a lot better after the game started to go. And initially there was some bad calls, bad plays, whatnot. But it seemed that once Jordan Tamu got into a rhythm, once the defense got into a rhythm, they were able to take care of the Roughnecks. So at number 5, we have the DC Defenders. Still some things they need to fix, still some things they need to do to go higher in our power rankings. But as of now, we have them sitting at number 5.
Number 6, we have the Michigan Panthers. Their offense has been atrocious through the first 2 weeks of the game of the season so far. But their defense has been absolutely phenomenal. It's been one of the more elite defenses in the entire league. And defense, as the common axiom goes, wins championships. I don't expect the Michigan Panthers to be winning any championships this season, but I certainly think they'll give any team they run into a tough challenge in terms of overcoming that really amazing defense they have. So Michigan Panthers, number 6 in our power rankings.
At number 7, we have the Arlington Renegades. They certainly put up a great fight against the Battlehawks. Unfortunately, fell. But there's still some issues at play here. I totally expect them to be higher in our power rankings potentially the next couple weeks. Once they figure out some of those issues, specifically on defense. But I think that they could absolutely turn things around. It's still early in the season, but as of now, we have them at number 7.
Yeah, honestly, until their offensive line and defense start playing better, that's where they deserve to be. But they'll always be number 1 in my heart. Number 8, we have the Houston Roughnecks. They have a lot of great pieces, and they certainly played better in week 2, but they have lost 2 games in a row now, and there's still a lot of questions, especially with all the injuries they have on their roster right now. So at least until they get healthier, we still have to unfortunately keep them at the bottom of our power rankings. Houston Roughnecks at number 8.
Yep. Except they'll be number 1 in my heart. But yeah, they certainly have some work to do. We'll have to see how the next week goes. I think certainly shaking things up at quarterback certainly helped. So we'll see if they can get the job done this upcoming week. And talking about this upcoming week in terms of the games that the UFL will be playing, let's go over our picks of the week, our buckle winner picks of the week, Rob. So for the first game that will be showcased this upcoming weekend, we have the DC Defenders versus the Arlington Renegades. Now, in
Yeah.
this game, Rob, who do you think is going to be coming out victorious?
Well, I've been saying it all episode long. I think the Renegades are still a better team than the Defenders, even though the Defenders have won a game and the Renegades haven't. The Renegades, they looked pretty close to being as good as the Battlehawks. They might have had a little bit of a rough start against the Stallions, but I think they're a much better team than their 0-2 record suggests. Whereas the Defenders almost lost to the Roughnecks and probably should have if it wasn't for that terrible injury to that running back that we were talking about. So I think if the Renegades can, be a little bit more disciplined, I think they should pretty easily handle the Defenders this weekend, get their first win on the season, and start rebuilding their chances to making the playoffs. The next game, Carson, we're going to look at here is the Showboats versus the Stallions, and that's got to be one of the most exciting games of the weekend. 2 of our top teams playing against each other. Who do you think is going to pull this one out, Carson?
I'm calling an upset. I think I'm seeing an upset here. And I know the Showboats are going down into Birmingham to play against the Stallions, but I think that the Showboats are a very good team, and they certainly have weapons that haven't necessarily been completely exploited yet. The Showboats played 2 teams that I would say have pretty good defenses, with especially the Roughnecks and then the Brahmas. Um, One thing I think that will be interesting to watch in this game is to see how well Victor does against the Stallions. For 2 years now, the Generals with Darius Victor have been able to run the ball very well against the Stallions, and they haven't necessarily been able to stop him. Of course, there's a lot more player acquisitions that have happened and whatnot, and he's of course on the Memphis Showboats now. But expect Darius Victor to have a big implement, and of course we've seen Case Cookus go at it against these Stallions. So I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be a very good game, but I'm calling an upset. I think the Memphis Showboats will take this close game against the Stallions at home.
Yeah. Next on the list, Carson, we have your favorite team, the Houston Roughnecks versus the Michigan Panthers. That's going to be an interesting matchup. I don't know who I expect to win that one. 2 very good defenses going up against each other. So, what do you think, Carson?
I think it's going to be a very low scoring game. as you kind of mentioned. I think both of these defenses are probably the best in the league when it comes to it. But I think, when you're really looking at it, if both defenses are equal to each other at stopping their offenses, you have to look at, on the offensive side, who would you rather go with? And I think that Reed Sinnett and the Roughnecks can get it done. I think that, it may not be pretty and it may be one drive in about five, but I do think that what Reed Sinnett showed us against a pretty good defenders defense in DC last week, he was able to put some stuff together with the wide receivers that we had, which is what I've always been harping on. We have really good wide receivers. We just haven't utilized them, and we did that against the defenders. So I think Reed Sennett's going to be able to get some action to those guys. Obviously, hoping Justin Hall comes back from that scary kind of hit late game against the defenders, as he's kind of probably one of our more dynamic receivers. But I expect the Roughnecks offense with Reed Sinnett to do a lot better things than the Panthers offense with EJ Perry. So I'm going to be taking the Roughnecks, beating the Panthers at home to get their first win of the season.
Yeah. And then finally, we have the Battlehawks versus the Brahmas. This is absolutely the matchup I am most excited for this weekend. Two of our top teams going up against each other. I think it's going to certainly be very close, but this game is in San Antonio. So I think I'm going to have to go with the San Antonio Brahmas here, just barely edging out a victory over the Battlehawks. Although I wouldn't be surprised to see this game go either way, because like I mentioned, these two teams are both fantastic this year. It's going to be a very exciting game to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. 100% agree. It's definitely between, of course, we're going to be watching our individual games and the Roughnecks and the Renegades, but I think the Showboat Stallions and Battlehawk Brahmas are going to be one of the two games that, on each day, that are going to be some really tough matchups between some really great teams. And it's going to be interesting to see who comes out on top. So
Yeah,
heading
I'm
into our
so
final
excited.
segment, here we go. Red Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week, Rob's favorite. Take it away, Rob. Who is our first Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week?
Okay, well, Carson, there's a defensive tackle playing for the College of Texas last season named Tavondre Sweat. He's projected to go, late first round, early second round. He kind of reminds me a lot of Dexter Lawrence. He's a big dude, but he moves really well for his size, can play the run, can play the pass. My man, Tavondre Sweat, got arrested this past weekend for driving while intoxicated. Come on, we had this whole conversation with Rashee Rice last week.
I
What are you
know.
doing? You are in line to be making billions of dollars to play football. You will be set for the rest of your life, and all you get to do is play your favorite game in the world. And you're going to
Yep.
go do something stupid like this that could jeopardize that? What are you thinking? You're not thinking. That's
Exactly.
the problem. What are
Yeah.
you doing? Tavondre Sweat, come on. You are a Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week. Please don't kill me. I know you could do it very easily. You're 360 pounds of pure muscle, but you are a clown of the week right now, sir.
Oh my goodness. Another Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week is, again, the Titans haters. Week number 2, where you're on the list. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But this past couple days, I ended up seeing this rankings that was put out on which NFL team would go winless next season. Now, of course, the Panthers were number 1 on that list with the highest odds of going winless. Of course, there's those question marks with Bryce Young, and they were only able to get 1 win last year. Not obviously the greatest. But number 2 in line was my Titans. Why are they at number 2? Have you not been paying attention this offseason, where they have been going out and filling their holes? And you may say they're old players, they won't be able to compete with everybody. But seriously, they're number 2 on the list to go winless. I don't understand how that's even possible. So yeah, who people who are hating on the Titans, which seems to be a common bandwagon trend right now. You all are going to be on the Red Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week. You're on it for number 2 in a row. We'll see if you get back on it. But absolutely frustrated. Do you have eyes to see the roster? Because I can point at any other rosters. The Cardinals, for example, that probably have a worse roster. Why are they not at number 2 to go winless? I don't know. Anyways, crazy to me. Obviously, I may have my own personal bias with the Titans being my boys, my team, but still, I still don't know how objectively you can look at their roster right now and look at it and be like, yeah, they're going winless with what they were able even to do last season with less. It's beyond me. So there you are. You're back on the list. Titans fans or Titan haters out there who are just being ignorant. You are our Red Zone Rodeo clowns of the week.
They just don't have faith in Will Levis, Carson.
They
They just
don't.
don't believe in him. They should.
They
He
need
puts
to.
mayo in his coffee. That man is serious. Okay.
Exactly. Everyone should be putting mayo in their coffee. That is a fact.
I put mayo in my coffee. I mean, that's just what everyone should be doing. You're right.
Everyone. Yeah.
Uh, so next on our Red Zone Rodeo Clowns of the Week, we have one of our takes from last week's episode or 2 weeks ago. I forget which, but we said that the Panthers and the Brahmas would combine for less than 6 wins this season. That is certainly looking pretty foolish right now because it looks like the Brahmas might have one of, if not the highest win totals in the entire season. This league will certainly exceed 6 wins on their own merit. Never mind adding the Panthers win total to that. It's starting to shape up that maybe our Renegades and Roughnecks together might not get to 6 wins this season, just based off of how everything's worked out so far, despite what we want to believe and what we tell ourselves and what we've said on this podcast. But yeah, saying that those two teams together, the Panthers and the Brahmas, would not get to 6 wins, certainly a Red Zone Rodeo Clown of the Week worthy take. So there you go. We are Clowns of the Week, Carson, once again.
They honestly, hey, the Brahmas certainly exceeded all expectations. And hey, even the Panthers, Jacob Bates, 64-yard field goal and a 62 one this past week. He certainly exceeded our expectations. And who knows, maybe that leg of Jacob Bates, and of course the Brahmas playing a lot better than we obviously expected them to, will carry them to many more wins than just 6. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Roughnecks get maybe 1. So, but obviously hoping not. The season is still long, and there's still a lot of game left to play. So, anything can happen. But yes, just as much as we are making fun of others for their takes, we have to also look at ourselves and some of the things that we also uh, put our money on in terms of yeah. Sometimes we have to eat our own words. So yeah.
Yeah, we're not above eating crow when we need to here at the Red Zone Rodeo.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, folks, I think that was going to wrap it up for this episode. Like we've been doing for pretty much almost every episode. Again, we just want to thank everybody for watching, and we appreciate all the support. And through your support, through your sharing of our videos and subscribing and liking the videos, it obviously just helps grow the channel. And it helps us, be able to do what we love, which is just sit here and talk football and have someone to listen to us. It's always a pleasure. And of course, we want to get you guys involved. And that's obviously a big thing here at Red Zone Rodeo. The Red Zone Rodeo is not just me and Rob. The Red Zone Rodeo is you all. And so that's something that we want to incorporate more into the future, but even right now. So please, if you have comments, suggestions, topics of conversation you want to talk with us, feel free to drop them down in the comment section below. We love to hear from you. We'll respond to you. We'll get back. We'll find ways to get you all involved. And of course, in the near future, hopefully we'll be doing some more things to get fan interactions. Gonna be bringing out some more polls, so make sure to keep your eyes out for those as well. Seem to have some interaction in regards to that for the last week's UFL games. We love to hear your takes. We love to hear who you think is going to be winning some of these games. Obviously, not only do you guys want to hear what we have to say, but we want to hear what you want to say. It's kind of a win-win situation for us all. So thank you so much for everything you do for helping and supporting the channel.
Yeah, for sure. Carson and I were just two guys who love to talk football. Doesn't matter who with. So if you have something you want to say about football, we are definitely more than happy to talk about that with you. So just, like Carson said, in the comments, in the polls, wherever, just reach out, tell us whatever it is that's on your mind, and we'd love to talk about it for sure. So
Absolutely. Any ways to get you guys involved. Well, hey guys, have a great and wonderful week. enjoy week 3 of the UFL. It should be an exciting one. Got loads of fun games coming up. I feel like every single week I get more hyped for it. So I hope you all are viewing it the same. And maybe we're hyping you up as well. So either way, win-win-win. Everybody wins. But you guys have a great week. Enjoy it. And we'll see you all on the next episode. Anything else, Rob?
Nope. I think that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.
Alrighty, guys. Well, we're going to be signing off. Have a good week and see you all next time.